Hello, and I hope this message finds you well. So, in the summer of 2019, I did a 2 week meditation retreat at Green Gulch Farm. And Green Gulch Farm is one of three Zen centers that fall under the rubric of San Francisco Zen Center. And all of them were founded by a man named Suzuki Roshi. Suzuki Roshi is best known for writing a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He's this bald guy here with the I don't know, kind of endearing look with the glasses. And he is known for being one of the pioneers who brought Zen to the West. Um, well, at Green Gulch, people engage in one of three duties. So it could be working on the farm, working in the garden, it could be cooking. I said one of three, but there's a fourth, which is cleaning the guest spaces. So as a retreat center, people rent out rooms frequently, and you can do that as well. And then in exchange for all of this work, there are a few things you get as a guest student. One is access to the Zendo, that's the Zen space where you meditate for several hours a day. Another is 3 meals per day. These meals are heavenly vegetarian food, most of which comes from the farm. And a final thing is access to Dharma talks. So maybe 1 or 2 evenings per week, there will be a visiting teacher who comes through, and everyone kind of gathers around and hears what they have to say. Maybe they're speaking from a book they've written, something like that. So that kind of rounds out life at Green Gulch. Now, while I was there, there was a once monthly full moon ceremony. This is an extra long meditation, and something else that characterizes it is it ends with extended prostrations and chanting. So it's a very like rhythmic, immersive experience. Something noteworthy about this ceremony is that we were all supposed to bring white socks because for some reason you needed to wear white socks rather than black socks during the full moon ceremony. So it was like in our packing list prior to our showing up. So, okay, I obeyed. I had the white socks. And while I was doing the prostrations and the chanting that I spoke about earlier, I had an ego death experience. So essentially, I felt my mind lift from my body and at first encompass just the space of the room that I was in and kind of the vibration of the other people there. And then I could see worship like ours happening all over the world. And I felt myself united with the fundamental frequency of the universe, I would say. And I knew that it was peace and love. Now, coming back to myself, once this experience was over, I was asked by the leader, our group leader, how was the full moon ceremony for everyone? And I said, well, I experienced ego death. And he was fairly dismissive. He was like, cool, how was it for others? Something you may not know about Zen, and which I didn't know at the time, but which explains this, is you're actually not supposed to speak about experiences like the one I just did. This is a faux pas because in Zen, it's thought that by putting language to the experience, you dilute or even pervert it. So that's probably why he didn't make a big deal of this experience that forever changed my life. Now, since coming to Green Gulch, something that's continued to fascinate me is how not only this space, but other spiritual education spaces seem to answer questions we're often asking about secular education. So, for instance, one of the things which concerns us in secular education is how do we customize educational pathways to meet each learner where they're at, especially in the age of technology, where we seem to have new means to strive after this aim. When I think about Green Gulch, the oldest person in my cohort was probably in their 60s or 70s. The youngest was in high school, and still each person was able to get what they needed, provided the particular circumstances in their lives that brought them there. Merely by existing in this open and static manner, Green Gulch was able to meet every individual's needs. Another question we ask ourselves in education is about assessment. How do we create appropriate assessments for all learners? Well, something interesting at Green Gulch is that each person is investigating some totally private inquiry that none of the others even need to know about. So, for example, I had the ego death experience that I spoke about. Someone else might have been inquiring about a relationship that was troubling them in their lives. Someone else might have been learning about, the farming or the gardening or the cooking. And each of these private assessments could be conducted without any need for sort of calibration among the others. Everyone could get their needs met once again. Now, a final thing we're curious about in education is how to do away with power differences, with hierarchies among teacher and student. In this respect, I would say Green Gulch doesn't have a novelty to offer us, but it does have maybe a spiritual principle that is yet to be realized. So at Green Gulch, like in other religious institutions, there are hierarchies among teacher and student, and there have even been abuses of power. However, in the spirit of Zen, there's also this idea that the learner is always the teacher and vice versa. And I think that principle can offer something to us in secular education. So, again, in secular education, we're often asking these questions. How can we customize pathways for all learners? How can we create assessments that are appropriate to everyone's needs? How can we do away with power hierarchies among teacher and student? At Green Gulch, I would argue, these questions are already answered. In the first case, through silence, in the second, through introspection, as opposed to external assessment, and in the third, at least ideally, through doing away with hierarchies among teacher and student. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a blessed day. Goodbye.